Tynan Portillo presents. Featuring the works of Edgar Allan Poe and the best horror stories from the 19th century. Welcome to the Poe Show podcast. Music and narration by Tynan Portillo. Today's episode, Bury Me in a Free Land by France Ellen Watkins Harper, with guest narrator Ella Bussie.
Make me a grave where'er you will, in a lowly plain or a lofty hill. Make it among earth's humblest graves, but not in a land where men are slaves. I could not rest if around my grave I heard the steps of a trembling slave. His shadow above my silent tomb would make it a place of fearful gloom. I could not rest if I heard the tread of a coffle gang to the shambles led, and the mother's shriek of wild despair rise like a curse on the trembling air. I could not sleep if I saw the lash drinking her blood at each fearful gash, and I saw her babes torn from her breast like trembling doves from their parents' nest. I'd shudder and start if I heard the bay of bloodhounds seizing their human prey, and I heard the captive plead in vain as they bound afresh his galling chain. If I saw young girls from their mother's arms, battered and sold for their youthful charms, my eye would flash with a mournful flame, my death-paled cheek growing red with shame. I would sleep, dear friends, where bloated might can rob no man of his dearest right. My rest shall be calm in any grave, where none can call his brother a slave. I ask no monument, pride and high, to arrest the gaze of the passers-by. All that my yearning spirits crave is bury me not in a land of slaves.
Hello and welcome back to the Poe Show. I'm your host, Tynan Portillo, and I have here our wonderful guest narrator, Ella Bussie. Ella, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people connect to you and hear more about what you do?
People can connect to me at Ella Bussie on Instagram.
Awesome. Are you on TikTok? Because I know TikTok was actually it was banned and then it wasn't. I don't know what happened.
Yes, I am actually also on TikTok at officially Ella. My two main platforms are Instagram and TikTok.
Cool. Well, Ella, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and for being willing to read that poem and also, have a quick conversation, because obviously this episode is going to be for Black History Month, and I wanted someone who has a greater tie to it than I do to come on and do an episode of the Poe Show. So reading over that poem, which is from the time where I believe it was just after the emancipation of the slaves, but it might have been right before as well. How does that poem speak to you?
It really speaks to me where it is so meaningful and it has so much of a deeper meaning than it can show on the surface. And it really goes to show that kids were taken from their parents and people were taken from their homes and killed, and it's a very deep meaning, and it really hits me hard.
Yeah, I really appreciate how the author, who is France Ellen Watkins Harper, she's saying, bury me not in a land of slaves, which is like, don't bury me here if we still have slavery. A very powerful message. Like, she's standing on that ground. And I really appreciate the bravery that takes to say that, especially in something like art. I like, just on this podcast, remembering things from around that century and 19th century stuff. But what do you like to remember during Black History Month?
I like to remember that my ancestors had to kind of fight to be where they are today, and that you can't just walk around and have everything given to you, and you have to work for what is right and fight for what is right, no matter what it is. And it goes to show that, like, for me especially, you really have to work for everything.
Do you happen to know any personal history of your ancestors and who you're related to?
I do know a little bit. My great-great-grandparents on my mom's side, with my mom being white, they did own slaves, and my dad is a Black man, and it was very hard for my mom with, like, my mom's dad, because he was very racist,
Whoa.
and he was not very supportive of my mom's marriage, and he never really just supported her choices.
That's kind of a crazy personal history. Um, that's like, wow. Does that how does that make you feel? Like, does it give you power, feeling like, oh, we can overcome that with time and love, or does it also fill you with some, like, resentment and hate?
Um, it gives me a little bit of power in that sense of feeling, because it really helps me know that, like, there are people still out there that are like that, and you just have to stand up to them and fight for what is right.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Um, who are some historical Black figures that you like to remember during Black History Month, or just basically throughout time and throughout your life? Because I think one of the bigger ones is Lewis Latimer, and he made the carbon filament that it basically improved Thomas Edison's light bulb, and was never given credit for it. I think Edison stole the patent from him, but I'm not entirely sure. So, like, that's a big one that a lot of people kind of learn maybe in school. But who do you like to remember?
I like to remember Ruby Bridges, because her being the first African American child to be integrated into an all white school
Mm.
is very powerful, because I grew up in Paulding County, Georgia, and it's a very majority white area,
Mm.
and my schools were all pretty much majority white. And so it helped me growing up, knowing that that has already happened and that I don't have to worry about that as a kid.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome to recollect the amazing leaps that people had to make in our past, so that way we could enjoy some benefits in the future. Like, that is very powerful. That's great. Um, I also like people like Madam C.J. Walker, and she was the first Black woman who was a self-made millionaire by selling. It was a lot of makeup and beauty products, and that happened in like 1910. Like, that is insane to me. Obviously, she worked really, really hard, and I just think that the kind of leaps and the kind of achievements that happened, even during that time, even in the 1910s, even in the 1800s, is so impressive. Considering a lot of the challenges that Black people went through were systemic, and I do make a distinction between systemic and social, because systemic refers to there is a law, for instance, against something or for something, and then social is just how we treat each other. Like, are there any social pressures or social taboos that you feel personally in your everyday life that aren't necessarily systemic, but you have to be conscious of them because of how you look?
I have to be very conscious of how I talk and act, especially in social situations, because I can get the bad reps that Black people have put onto me very quickly because I am a Black woman working and trying to accomplish things. And if I'm acting out in public or am just kind of being silly, then I feel like I can get that brought onto me.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that.
No, yeah, and I've also had to like whitewash myself, I guess, to be
Mm.
able to kind of cover that up. And especially growing up where I grew up, it's hard to have to try and fit in when you're meant to stand out.
Now, is there something that like you want to do that is a genuine part of you that you feel like you have to censor, like a specific thing that you're like, I wish I could be more of myself this way?
Not necessarily because I feel like from a young age, because I was called slurs in elementary school,
Oh
I
my
have
god.
had potatoes thrown at me because I've been called a burnt potato.
Oh my
It's
god.
Yeah, it's really
Oh my
bad.
god. Wait, hold on. We're laughing. That's a terrible thing, but we are laughing because I've had similar stuff happen to me before, and people call me wetback, and people call me I actually like border bunny. That one's actually a personal favorite. But okay, well, thank you for sharing all of that about yourself. Is there something that you would like to see in the future for Black history? Something you'd like to see in our society in general?
I would like to see more women, Black women especially, in strong, like male dominant fields, just because it's not shown that much. And there are people who have made it there, like Kamala Harris being the first Black female vice president,
And no
was.
matter how you feel about her politically, that is a feat. You have to admit. I just have to say that as a disclaimer because people are going to be like,
Yes.
wait, you like her? It's like, no, look at the fact that she actually just did it, okay? However you feel about it. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
You were all good. She accomplished something that no other woman has done, and let alone she's a Black woman, and she stands proud of that. And Michelle Obama, she's accomplished so much.
Michelle Obama was really great. I know that some people make fun of her for like putting more healthy food in schools. Like I remember kids when I was in school, we were like, "Oh, let's take an apple because of Michelle," and then we'd throw it away because we don't actually want the fruit. But at least that was something, to try and help the health of America. Like that was a huge thing to do as the first lady.
Yes, and she like pushed her daughters to do so much, and so now her daughters have accomplished certain things, and like they're working to continue accomplishing so many big things that will be a first for Black women.
Yeah. Um, so I guess I kind of want to talk about. I'm not sure if you've heard. I'm sure that you have, but there are some executive orders that are taking out DEI efforts, and oddly enough, if you look at the statistics, the people who benefit the most from DEI initiatives are actually white women. Um, and all that initiative is it's trying to say, let's get other qualified people, already qualified, who are minorities in some other way, shape, or form, right? So I feel like some people assume that DEI means that, oh, Ella, if you got a job, you got that job because you're a woman, or you got that job because you're Black. And that's not what it actually assumes that you're less qualified for the job because of how you look, because of how you were born. And I hate that. Does that affect you personally in your life, or do you just kind of keep on living?
I kind of just keep on living. I am a preschool teacher, and I feel like that's more of like a female dominated field. Like, you don't see a lot of men working in preschools. So I guess that could be one way that it like affects me personally. But I feel like overall, I kind of just keep on living.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, what else can you do? I mean, we vote and we support causes that we support, but at the end of the day, we just got to keep on living and speak out against things that we don't like and speak for things that we do like. So, yeah, that is the thing to do, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, are there any other thoughts that you have that you want to share with the listeners about Black history or about the poem or anything else?
Not really, other than don't let anybody push you down. Keep fighting for what is right and really show people that you can just keep living and enjoy life how it is. And if there is something happening, stand up for yourself. Don't let people push you around.
Well, thank you so much, Ella, for coming on to the Poe Show. Again, remind people where they can find you.
You can find me on TikTok at officially Ella or on Instagram at Ella Bussie.
Awesome. Thank you so much for reading the poem. Thank you so much for this great conversation. Listeners, check her out. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Poe Show, and a very special thank you to Ella Bussie for being a guest on the podcast. Really powerful poem, and I modeled the music after Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, mixed in some blues to really support the poem. So if you like this episode, then be sure to follow Ella on TikTok and Instagram. Follow and subscribe to this podcast on TikTok and Instagram. Feel free to support the show using the link in the description and send a text message to the show to ask questions or request stories. And to that one listener out there, who I'm keeping nameless for their privacy, I am going to feature a story from The King in Yellow soon. Keep your ears peeled. Can you peel your ears? That sounded wrong. Anyway, thanks for listening to this episode of The Poe Show. Be sure to follow, subscribe, like, and share. You'll hear from me again on the next episode of The Poe Show.